なかった。ただ一つ確か成果しか。
Welcome back to Gabriel Talks Gundam. Last episode I said things were going to be a bit different and I'd explain some stuff, and I am. Today, we're taking a step back to look at the bigger picture of the conflict that defined the Universal Century, the One-Year War. This war wasn't just a backdrop for the first Gundam series, it was the event that forged everything that came after. The Universal Century 0079 was a year of chaos, technological leaps, and moral collapse. What began as a colonial independence movement spiraled into one of the bloodiest conflicts in human history. Let's start at the beginning. Humanity had expanded into space, living in massive orbital colonies known as sides. Over time, resentment built as the colonies felt oppressed by the Earth Federation's bureaucracy and neglect. From that tension rose the Principality of Zeon, led by the Zabi family who preached the philosophy of space-noid independence. But Zeon didn't just declare independence, they launched a war of annihilation. In the first month of fighting, Zeon dropped colonies on Earth, wiping out nearly half of humanity. This wasn't a simple rebellion anymore, it was a total war. And yet, despite their smaller numbers, Zeon initially dominated the battlefield. Why? Mobile suits. At the war's start, the Federation relied on conventional tanks, aircraft, and warships, essentially 20th century military doctrine with some futuristic paint. Zeon, meanwhile, unleashed the MSO-6 Zaku 2, a humanoid weapon that changed warfare forever. The Zaku's high mobility, firepower, and adaptability made every Federation vehicle obsolete overnight. It was the dawn of a new kind of warfare, one where pilots in armored suits could dance through space, using thrusters and verniers like extensions of their own body. The Zaku wasn't just a machine, it was war evolving, but as the war dragged on, the balance began to shift. The Federation wasn't idle. Through Project V, they developed their own mobile suits, the RX-75 gun tank, RX-77 gun cannon, and the revolutionary RX-78-2 Gundam. When the White Base launched carrying these prototypes, the tide of war began to change. Still, Zeon's engineers were relentless. They kept experimenting with suits like the Guf, Dom, Gelgug, Zigak, Akugoi, and the Rikdom, with each one a new idea, a new frontier in mobile suit design. Zeon was a crucible of innovation, constantly producing specialized suits for space, land, and sea combat. But this technological chaos came with a price: inconsistency, logistical nightmares, and constant retooling. Meanwhile, the Federation refined its designs into mass production models like the RGM-79 Jim, simple, efficient, and produced by the thousands. The result was clear: Zeon had the superior machines, but the Federation had the industrial power. The final battles of Solomon and Baoku became slugfests between quality and quantity, and ideology and survival. In the end, the Federation's overwhelming numbers and organized logistics crushed Zeon's fragmented brilliance. By the end of UC 0079, the Principality was in ruins. The Zabi family was gone, and the colonies were devastated. But the One-Year War changed everything. It transformed humanity's relationship with war, technology, and even identity. The age of the mobile suit had just begun. Before I wrap up, as I said earlier, I want to clear something up from earlier episodes, especially for those following along closely with my breakdown of early Zeon and Federation mobile suits. When I talked about the earlier models, the Zaku 1, Zaku 2, and prototypes and so on, and put them next to each other, my point wasn't to say one side's machines were better than the other. I wasn't comparing power levels or performance stats. What I was showing was how quickly Zeon's mobile suit technology evolved compared to the Federation's slower but more centralized development process. Zeon's engineers were working like mad scientists in a war lab, pushing out new suits almost every few months. The MSO-4 Bagu led directly to the MSO-5 Zaku 1, which quickly evolved into the MSO-6 Zaku 2, and from there splintered into dozens of specialized types for space, ground, high mobility, amphibious, and even reconnaissance units. They were experimenting constantly, adapting to every environment they encountered. Meanwhile, the Earth Federation was still in the proof of concept phase with Project V. The RX-75 gun tank and RX-77 gun cannon were hybrid machines, half tank and half mobile suit, showing that the Federation was still trying to understand how to use this new kind of weapon. The Gundam, when it finally rolled out, was essentially their first fully realized combat mobile suit, and it entered the war months after Zeon had already fielded entire battalions. So when I put those suits side by side, it's not a head-to-head match, it's a timeline comparison. I'm showing how both sides are developing around the same time, but Zeon was producing more models, experimenting with more variations, and moving through design generations faster. Zeon's war machine was frantic and innovative, while the Federation's was methodical and strategic. Both approaches make sense when you consider their resources. Zeon needed breakthroughs to stay alive. The Federation could afford to play the long game. So when I discuss these suits in future episodes, keep that in mind. It's not about which one could win in a fight, but what each one says about their creators, their priorities, and their philosophies of war. The Zeon suits tell a story of desperation, brilliance, and individuality. The Federation suits tell a story of industrial power, standardization, and efficiency. Together, they paint the full picture of the One-Year War's technological race. That race defined the universal century. That's all for today's episode of Gabriel Talks Gundam. We have looked at how a single year reshaped human history, and how the clash between Zeon's innovation and the Federation's might forged legends like the RX-78-2 Gundam. Next time, we'll keep diving into the evolution of mobile suits, with the next episode being the MS-07 Goof, my favorite Zeon mobile suit. Until then, keep your mono eyes glowing and your beam sabers charged. And this has been Gabriel Talks Gundam.